and welcome back to my channel. My name is Elena. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. This channel is all about DIY, making things for yourself on a super duper tight budget. Let me just start out by saying that I don't know that braids were the best idea for a YouTube video, but here we are. Moving on. So this week I took on making 3 hanging planters. making 3 plant hangers out of terracotta air dry clay. If you've been here for a little while now, you have probably caught on that I have 2 main loves in my life, aside from my husband and my kids. Those loves are 1, air dry clay, and 2, terracotta. So in this week's video, I combined those 2 loves to make my 3 hanging planters. So I wanted to do this because I had planted some pots with my son from seed, hoping that flowers would sprout, and they just failed miserably. So I wanted to replace those with some already started flowers from the nursery. So I went to the nursery, got my 2 things to put in my pots, and somehow these houseplants called my name, and I ended up walking out of the store with 8 of them. The thing is, I have little kids and I have a very curious cat who would not leave these little plant babies alone. So I needed to elevate them away from the ground so no one but myself could reach them. And so that is how this video came to be. TBH, I am obsessed. I've now created a plant corner in my home, which if you follow me on Instagram, you will have seen that I have gone a little overboard, and I can't stop and I won't stop. If you're enjoying this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel for weekly DIY videos. I post new content every single week. And with that, let's jump into the projects. For my first clay plant hanger, I used a mixture of white and terracotta air dry clays. I've been using Crayola brand, and I find that it's really easy to work with, and the container keeps it from drying out. I've had the same container for almost 2 months, and it's still kept its moisture. I'll link the exact kind I use in the description below. I then rolled out the clay into a circle-ish shape until it was about 1/4 inch thick. I wanted my plant hanger to have a solid color edge around the top, so I then took another chunk of terracotta and rolled it into a log that was about 1 inch thick. I placed the log around the edge of the clay disc and then used my roller to flatten it to the same thickness as the already rolled out clay. I used a cereal bowl as a circle template and used a knife to trace it onto my clay. Once I had my perfect circle, I used the bottom of a measuring cup as my shape form, but you could use any kind of jar or glass that you have. I then started to work my clay around the outside of the measuring cup to form it into the shape I wanted, which was kind of a scalloped edge shallow bowl. Next, I took a skewer to poke holes where my strings will eventually be attached. I let that sit and harden for about 2 days. Before it was completely dry, I did remove it from the measuring cup and let it continue to harden on its own. Once it was completely dry, I took some twine and thread it through the 3 holes that I had made and tied a double knot on the bottom of the plant holder. I snipped the ends so they looked nice and neat. Lastly, I tied the 3 strands of twine together in a knot. I love how this turned out, and it is a great little home for my tiniest plant. For my next plant hanger, I actually used white clay, but don't think that I didn't work some terracotta hues into this little guy. Hang on to the end and you'll see what I mean. So I started by rolling the clay out into a 1/4 inch thick disc. I used a Tupperware lid as my template to trace a circle. After I cut out my circle, I gently started to lift the edges up to make a plate shape. The key to getting this to look nice and neat is getting your hands damp and using the water to smooth out the edges and creases as much as you can, using both hands at the same time so that it doesn't look wrinkled. Nobody wants wrinkled pottery. Once that was smooth, I used my skewer to poke 3 holes in a triangle shape on the plate. I let this dry for about 2 days on a sheet of plastic wrap. Once that was dry, I mixed my paint, and here's where I get my terracotta fix. I definitely got my inspiration for this design from Tina Lee, I'm not sure how you say it, whose channel I'll link below. She is my favorite YouTube DIY gal, so definitely go check her out. But she recently posted something from one of her friends on Instagram who had painted something in a similar design, so I definitely want to give credit where it's due. I freehanded the design onto my plate using 3 colors. I tried to do basically the same design on both the top and the bottom of the plate, making sure the paint seams lined up on the sides. I then splatter painted white over the entire top and bottom. After the paint was dry, I cut 3 strips of faux leather ribbon from Hobby Lobby, and I just love this stuff because it comes on a really wide spool, and I've used it in so many projects because it just never seems to run out. It's a great way to get that leather feel in an animal-friendly and super affordable way. Otherwise, leather shoelaces would work great for this too. I thread them through the holes in the plate and tied a secure knot on the bottom. Lastly, I tied the 3 strands together in a knot. I'm so happy with how this turned out, and I just love looking at it hanging in my new little plant corner. For my last plant hanger, I set out on an ambitious path to make a heavy-duty aged pottery-like dinner plate to use as a hanging platform to keep my plant babies safe. But I'm glad that I did it because it turned out super cool. So I rolled out a large slab of clay to about 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick. I used a dinner plate as a circle template and used a knife to trace it onto my clay. I placed a piece of plastic wrap on a large dinner plate and pressed the slab of clay onto it so that it would take the same form. I used my skewer to poke 12 holes in my clay, 6 on each side so they're facing each other. I let the clay dry on the plate for 2 days until it was still a little soft and not entirely hardened. I very carefully flipped my plate upside down so I could add a bottom rim, just like a real dinner plate would have. I rolled out a long slab of clay and cut a thin strip for the rim. I placed the rim on my plate in as close to a perfect circle as possible to mark where I needed to score the plate. I scored the bottom of the plate and the rim using my skewer. I applied water to both and attached the rim to the plate. I used a little more water to smooth all the edges and let this dry for about 3 more days. It needed a longer time to harden because it was a thicker piece of clay. Once it was dry, I was ready to paint. I wanted to make this look like aged terracotta using acrylic paints, so I used an off-white color, a beige gray color, and brown. I dry brushed my white over the entire surface, making sure there was barely any paint on my brush. I then did the same thing with my gray paint. Last, I used my brown to accent where natural weathering would occur, focusing on the edges and the bottom rim. Next, I cut 6 strands of twine that were each 24 inches long. I thread a strand through each hole and tied a triple knot on the bottom. I then trimmed the ends so they were all the same length. I gathered all 12 strands together and tied one giant knot at the end. I love how weathered this looks, and it's a perfect rustic addition to my plant corner. Well, that's all she wrote. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and let me know in the comments which project was your favorite. I would love to know. I'd also love if you gave this video a thumbs up, and make sure to subscribe to my channel for weekly DIY videos. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you back here soon.